Welcome back. What's good, homies? Welcome back to the Drafts and Draughts podcast. I'm Joe, aka Sultan. This is Dave, aka Disaster. It's Wednesday, May 8th, and today we're going through our top 12 to 18 ish dynasty quarterbacks, uh, transferable to both one quarterback or super flex formats. But before we get into it, I wanted to let you guys know that today's episode is brought to you by our first sponsor. It's brought to you by Dan Cournoyer CPA. Dan is a good friend of the show, good friend of the program. He's one of the managers in our one quarterback dynasty league, and he specializes in U.S. individual and small business taxes and bookkeeping. If you're tired of doing your own tax returns or you're just frustrated with the services you've been getting, sign up for a free consultation with Dan. We're going to have the link in the bio or in the show notes or the description of the show. Or if you're on Spotify or Apple Music, you should be able to see it in the description below. Um, Dan helps with your individual tax returns, your retirement questions, credits, real estate, you name it. He's always there as somebody you can rely on. He knows what he's doing. I personally have been using Dan for the last 8 years to do not only my own personal income taxes, but I used to run a small business, and Dan did all of our corporate small business LLC taxes. And the best part about Dan is that he's always, not always available. He's not an open book, but he's very easy to reach. He's easy to talk to. If you have a question, you can shoot him a text, you can shoot him a call. It's never going to really be intrusive on his day, and he's always super helpful with explaining things. As if he's talking to a 5-year-old, which is what I need when it comes to taxes. I think Dave's used Dan in the past as well. So, if Dave, you have anything to add?
No, to summarize it, Dan's the best. If you need help with bookkeeping, accounting, anything of the sort, reach out to Dan.
Awesome. So yeah, again, that hit the link to book a quick 30-minute appointment with Dan will be in the description after the episode. But moving on, Dave, what's going on? You said you're under the weather again. Surprising for a father of two. But our rookie draft in our one quarterback league is coming up next Monday. Are you getting excited? Are you ready for it? Like, what's going through your head right now? Are you excited for today's episode?
Excited for the episode. Our draft I'm excited for. I sent out 8 trade offers yesterday. 3 got denied. 5 are still lingering.
None to me.
I'm a little. Our league was used to be not everyone super talkative, but it feels like this year's a little off, where the people are a little bit more quiet than usual going into the draft. There's a little bit less just heat coming in from everybody. So I'm curious to see how it goes. I hope we get really good attendance, and I hope we get a lot of activity. So I know you had yours recently for your other league, and I just hope that ours kind of maintains the same.
Yeah, definitely. I think we're at a very weird spot in our league where, we are now 5 years removed from the startup. So people are starting to feel the repercussions of if they traded away draft picks or if they whiffed on draft picks. Whereas like the last 2 or 3 years, you drafted Traylon Burks in the first, you could still get by with your startup Amari Cooper. It didn't really you drafted Clyde Edwards-Helaire first overall. You still got by with the fact that you had Cooper Kupp, or like you had some kind of fail safe. And now I think people are looking at their teams and going, holy fuck, DeAndre Hopkins is 31. Devontae Adams is 31. Like, Raheem Mostert is like all these guys that we may have been seeing as these reliable pieces we could depend on are now going by the wayside. And I think everyone's getting a little nervous about trading away picks or getting a little nervous about or maybe people just don't care. But I like to think people are just a little bit more reluctant to make trades because now there's this uncertainty around, holy shit, this really matters now because no longer can I have this is my Debo say or whatever, my Amari Cooper or Calvin Ridley or whoever Cortland Sutton, all these young pieces that were youthful in our startup are now these old crusty assets that nobody really wants. And it's like such a weird transition for I think a lot of managers to look at their team and go, holy fuck, I have nobody that I like. Or like I don't want to trade away my only draft pick because I don't want Deontay Johnson to be my most exciting piece. But maybe I'm wrong.
Candidly, that's my concern that no one's doing that. And I sent out a lot of feelers trying to say, hey, like especially the teams that can kind of win now. I basically sent them my starting lineup last year, where I came in third, and offering them, but I won the regular season too, and offer them a lot of good pieces that, hey, if you need depth and you need to fill in your roster, they're going to be better than your starting roster right now, but you have some other good aging pieces too. If you want to go all in, I'm the trade partner for you. And unfortunately, no one in our league is doing that. I think they're just hoping that eventually they'll get draft capital back. But a lot of people only have one first, or they don't have their firsts, and they're just kind of lingering out into the ethos of being bad. So I really hope people wake up and start to see that. And it might take to go through the draft to realize, oh wow, my team's actually pretty garbage.
I
But
think the draft helps materialize some trades.
the tough thing is no one's doing anything about it. Like we had a couple last year that did do that in some ways, but we're not having it happen right now. So I think now's the time it should be happening, which is a concern that there's not a lot of trade discussions going on within the league. So we'll see.
Yeah. I think the activity during the draft will pick up a little bit because I think as certain players fall to certain picks, where if somebody was hoping to get a wide receiver at 106 and it's not there, they might say, well, now I want to trade down, or vice versa. They see a guy they think should have been taken at 108, still available there. They might trade up to go get him. So I don't know. I would like to think people are going to do that. It depends on how people start valuing picks and players. I think that we've seen 2 cycles of no one valued picks, then people overvalued picks, and now we're getting to a new point where it's like, what the fuck do we do with these picks? This is an exciting class too. I think everyone's kind of excited for us. I'm super excited for our draft. But anyways, let's move on to the draft review. I just went to the liquor store. I picked up 5 new different beers I've never had before. Thank you for the advice. For those of you at home, don't go buy the single serve cans off the shelf, because if Dave didn't tell me, I would have walked out with a 6-pack of IPAs that were canned almost a year ago. So don't do that. I bought 5 different 4-packs of beers. You know what? While I'm talking, I guess I'll go first. I'm super excited to talk about this one. It's a local one, technically, because I'm from Mass. It's called the Shandy Beach Summer Shandy by Night Shift Brewing Co. It's a beautiful, like, sunset looking beach with pink sand and little lemons and a lemon umbrella on it. It's a really cool, cute can. It's got a little owl in the middle of it. The cool thing about it is, your standard shanty is just like lager, beer, and lemonade. This is an IPA and lemonade. So I'm curious to see what this tastes like. Is it good or not? I was craving something sweet, so that's what I went with. I'll give you a quick crack, and then you can go ahead.
Love it. Well, with me being under the weather, I have some heavy IPAs. There's a lot of good ones I wanted to share. One's named Amen Corner for the Masters. Another one is a collab by 2 great breweries that I won't name yet. Unfortunately, I am not in the mood to be having 8% beer. I don't even know how much of this beer I'm going to have, but I do want to still do a tasting. And so I tried to grab something that was unique that hopefully people haven't had. I have not had this before, but I've seen it at a couple local restaurants here start popping up. So it's pronounced, it's Tona. It is a Nicaraguan lager, cerveza.
Oh.
And so excited to try it. I've heard good reviews on it. And yeah, so we'll see how it goes.
All right. Cheers, Dave.
Cheers.
All right. Not gonna lie. I'm gonna give this a on the scale of the way shanties go and stacking up. It's not enough IPA and it's not enough shanty. I give it a 2 out of 5. I'm sorry, Night Shift. I'm sure you have plenty of great offerings, but the sweetness of the lemon falls flat, and there's no kick in the back end that makes me feel like I'm getting the good alcohol content. I think there's only 5% too, so that's probably why. But I just think it falls flat on both fronts. Sorry to admit it.
Mine's pretty good. Mine, especially for what it is, it's kind of like how I understand it, it's kind of like it's a import beer, but it's kind of like one of the staples in Nicaragua. To me, it's kind of like if Dos Equis and Corona had a baby. This is kind of what it tastes like. And I love Dos Equis and Corona. So if you're talking about just like a Mexican or like a South American lager, I'm gonna go with 4. Like, it's really good.
Ooh.
Solid little. I don't know what it is. It's
fitting.
a full lager, but
Cinco de Mayo. I should have thought of that. I should have gone with something Mexican.
Yeah. Not a Cinco de Mayo. We did a big thing this weekend. Drank a lot of margaritas, which maybe that's why I'm sick. I don't know.
It's got to be it. You're not what you used to be.
No, not.
All right, awesome. So let's move on to our one tough question. And so, Dave, I want you to think about, and maybe we can do a full episode on this. So let's not get too long-winded on it. But if you're making a startup today, what are some of the non-negotiable rules you would have? And then to caveat off that, what are some things you may have learned that we did wrong since our startup? What are some things we did right and that you think that we would keep, or some things you would change? And then maybe even what are some lesser important, not non-negotiable, but rules you would like to see. But most importantly, what are the not, like, you would not, if somebody said, "Hey, David, I'm starting a league up. Do you want to join?" And they list off a little set of rules. What's the first? Maybe like, if it's not this, I'm not playing.
Yeah. And this is Startup Dynasty, right?
Yeah, Dynasty startup.
So, it's so tough because unfortunately, a lot of the things I think would make my non-negotiable right now is partially because I haven't played in them, and I think that I'm seeing some of the faults in our current league that I'd love to adjust. And so I think that the biggest thing I would try to focus on would be um, getting better parity across the positions for true value. So, like, I think I've adjusted now where I was pretty anti Superflex 3 years ago. I've kind of come around the last few years to be like, all right, I understand it more, and I'm inclined to like it. Um, but I would say, that I would say 3 wide receivers starting, not necessarily 2 flex, but 3 wide receivers starting with probably 1 flex, or maybe a flex and a super flex.
Mhm.
Um, I would lean towards probably doing things in the nature of either being half PPR or being PPR, but also adding incentives for first downs or other things to the running backs to make them more viable as a flex position player, especially in today's league where there's so many committee backfields. And so
I
I'd
like
lean
that.
probably more in the half PPR, but a tight end premium tight ends do get 1 full PPR. And then for running backs, maybe there is like point 0.1 or point 0.2 for first down, something of that nature. Just something to add a little bit more points and excitement into all of the positions that, to your point, one thing you've always said that I agree with wholeheartedly is that it's always a lot more fun to look at 200 versus 189 versus 102 versus 98. Even though it's closer than the other side, it's a lot more exciting to know that you can score a lot of points really fast. Um, I'd probably also go heavy into doing 6 point per passing TDs, which we started at 4. We're not 5. Same thing. I'd probably move that to 6. Just so that
Okay.
every touchdown is 6 points. So it's kind of more aligns a lot of the points things I think are my kind of true non-negotiable. What's yours?
Interesting that you said these are non-negotiable, and then you listed off a bunch of options for them. So it's almost like they
Well,
are
the
negotiable.
non-negotiable is having the points better spread out. That
No,
it makes
I know.
most players viable.
I
More
know what you
players
meant.
viable
It just
throughout the
is
league.
funny.
Yeah.
So my non-negotiable thing is like one of 3 options you could pick from. No. So my non-negotiable is one, you have to have and I think this is one we nailed, have an organized league handbook that covers basically everything up front that you could possibly even imagine encountering, whether it's the formatting, the pay structure, the rookie draft rules, the draft pick order decided on, what we do for trades, when's the trade deadline, when do waivers run? Just like not one thing that at some point in the future, and granted, we're lucky we're in a league full of friends, so we don't have to deal with it as much, is where last thing you want to do is encounter something that a random person brings up in your league that you don't have accounted for, and it puts the commission a weird spot where they have to apply some subjectivity to it, and that creates an opportunity for someone to say, that's bullshit, this commission doesn't know what he's doing, I'm fucking leaving. Somebody else says, you know what, he's right, like commission doesn't, have a complete set of guidelines, and have some specific rule that's, hey, in the event of something we don't have covered, the commission reserves the right to make a rule that's in the best interest of the league, or we would vote on it, and with supermajority, that will be the rule going forward. Some sort of outline set of rules, non-negotiable. I'm not joining a rule where someone says, "Hey, I'm doing a startup super flex, starts on Friday. Do you want to join?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. What are the rules?" Like, "Oh, we haven't actually ironed it out yet, but we know we want to do 2 quarterbacks and at least PPR, and then we're gonna vote on the rest over the summer." And I'm like, "No, like." So a little side note, coworker of mine just started a Superflex startup with a bunch of his neighborhood friends, like, that live in his neighborhood. Like, I'm sure some of them have never played fantasy, very, very low skill ceiling, whatever. The commissioner randomized the draft order. And again, this guy could be lying to me, but he randomized the draft order, right? And then after they chose a draft order, the commission goes, "Do you guys want to do the rookie draft separate, or do you want rookies to be included with the startup?" So, of course, the guys who had pick 1, 12, 11, 10, 9 all said, "We want the rookie draft separate." And my coworker, he has pick 102. And he's going, "Well, obviously, I don't want to do that because now you at the 112 get to take Trevor Lawrence and then also get Caleb Williams. Like, that's not fair. You get 2 first round caliber players. I get one. Granted, it's Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes, but it's such a huge advantage for the guys because right now Marvin Harrison and Caleb Williams go in the first round of Superflex startups. The 111 and 112 are essentially getting 2 firsts. And I was like, damn, you probably should have figured that shit out before you guys picked all this shit and then voted on it afterwards. And I'm like, I told him, I was like, straight up, if I join that, I don't care if it's my mom organized the league, I would tell her to go fuck herself and I'm leaving.
Well, it's
Like,
also like then you don't even know what's the order for the rookie draft. Are you re-rolling it or are you going reverse order and it's linear?
right.
If it's a snake. Like there's so many other factors there too. Or like how do you decide that order? Is it by kickers being drafted or whatever it is? So there's so many different unique things. So yeah, I totally agree. And I think that like the one I would lean into that's like not non-negotiable, but it would entice me to want to do it more. Um would be which the other thing I say is actually 100% non-negotiable is fab. You have to have fab.
Yep,
That's
that's a great one. Has free agent acquisition budget for those we don't know. If you're doing waivers where it's based on waiver priority, nix that shit in the butt right now. Fucking switch to free agent acquisition budget. It's such a superior system.
So the two that I would say that are like kind of like a wish to haves would be one is to do a salary cap league. I'm really interested in doing that, at least for the draft. And I think that just makes it more fun, especially in a dynasty setting. I'd much rather know, okay, hey,
Absolutely.
all of us are walking in with $300. You don't keep them beyond this, but like then you can make the rules. You have to have at least $1 per person you draft, and like it just makes it so that if I actually really, no matter what, want Patrick Mahomes as my team because I am a Chiefs fan, I'm not, but I could go spend whatever value I want up to if it's a 20
Yeah,
or 30 person
right.
draft league, right? Up to $269.70 I can put up to
Nice.
go get to go get Mahomes. So I think there's things like that I think are I would probably lean more towards. And the other one I was gonna say was I am having done our league for so long now, I am really anti-tanking to automatically have the first overall pick. And so I would say that's borderline non-negotiable, but I would also say like there's other options than what we have in our league. And so I
Yeah.
would love to know like I would want to make sure I have very clear guidelines on what that is because I do not want it to be I went 0-15 and I had the first overall pick just because I just tanked. I just
Yeah.
don't want that to be an option. So those are probably the two that are close to non-negotiable, but I would actually really intrigue me to join another league.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you on, I personally don't like tanking, although I told you I'm in one other league with strangers where it's like, it's fun because it scratches my trading itch. And for us, because I don't know any of these people, like it's least max points for reverse order of that decides the first 6 picks. There's no gray area. You can have a clear set direction. There's no consolation bracket you got to worry about winning. There's no lottery I have to worry about some guy fucking with. There's no tanking where some guy throws his lineup and I have to wonder, like, oh, did he set an optimal lineup or is he trying to fuck me over out of the first one? Like, it's just if I don't score a lot of points optimally, I get the first overall pick, and it just works out nicely
No,
for
I
us.
think that, and I do think like even though I love ours, I think ours is fun, intriguing to make a more fair, competitive dynasty league. That is the best way to do it.
Yeah, if your sole point of playing Dynasty is to try to make money, that's the only way to play. But if you like having things to play for and things to keep the league active and events to have, like our rookie lottery is an event now in March. It's something that everyone gets excited for, and then we have an off-season meeting, and then we have the NFL draft, and we have our rookie. Like it keeps a series of things to look forward to that I think keeps our league fresh, or at least we thought it kept our league fresh. It's been pretty dead for a month now, but the only other must-have non-negotiable item for me is no vetoes. I don't want I make a trade and then 2 people are butthurt about it and they tell the commission this trade's not fair and the commission goes, "Oh, I want to protect you, so I'm going to veto this," and then make me add another pick. Or I've heard of some leagues. I heard this on a podcast once. I think it's the most ridiculous fucking thing I've ever heard of is a 24-hour or 48-hour trade like usurping window where like if me and you make a trade and I offer you a second for Devontae Adams and you accept, and then there's 24 hours where everybody else in the league could offer me a better trade for the second or offer you a better trade for Devontae Adams. Like, what the fuck? I just spent
I mean,
maybe months.
the only thing I would think about that, like that would actually to me be kind of intriguing in your other league where you don't know anybody, because it's a lot easier to just get a trade out that is kind of agreed on principle, but then you allow others to go up and try to trade better with that. But do they have to take the best deal or can they pick the partner?
They can do whatever the way that trade works would be like, so then say someone offers you a first for Devontae. You could say, well, I'm going to take the first now. I get one more chance. Nobody else can now intervene. I get one more
Right.
chance to say, let me try to make a better deal with you. If I can't get a better deal, you take the other guy's trade.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing too. Like, but like an example, Adams is a bad one. But say it was Tank Dell, and you make me a deal with Tank Dell, and I don't really want to trade with you, or like say I trade with someone else, like Trevor, and then you make a better offer, but I don't want to give you Tank Dell because your team's already too good. I also would like, I wouldn't want to be that I'm forced to take the better deal because there are situations where you might not want to trade that player to a certain
Well, the better
manager.
deal is subjective, but you could say, I accept Joe's better offer. Trevor, you can now either one up Joe's offer, or you have to take mine. You can't say, I'm taking Joe's unless you can give me better. And then say, oh, never mind. Like, I just wanted to use that to leverage it. What I don't like about that is like, and I want to do a whole episode on trading with you. I've already outlined a bunch of details for it, but like, I like to take pride in the fact that I think I'm a good trade partner, whether that be good at receiving offers, like making conversation about the offer or explaining why I might dislike or dislike without turning you off, without saying, Dave, are you fucking retarded? Like, I actually might be like, hey, I do like this. I don't like that. Like, hey, I see the way you're going with this, but fostering a trade relationship, working on a trade, being like you coming to me months ago and me keeping that in the back of my mind and saying, oh, I know Dave wanted this. I found a good opportunity. Hey, you said mention this to me a couple months. I'd put all this work in for James to open his phone one day randomly in September, see a trade and go, oh, I could beat that, and just throw an extra first in and go, are you kidding me? I just spent all this time fostering a trade relationship with Dave for some guy who's done no work at all to jump me.
Which I think again, it works out better for when you don't know anyone in the league. But
Yeah.
anyways, I totally get your point. All right, let's get the QBs. We're 20 minutes in.
Yeah.
We want to try to get a more efficient podcast out there for you guys because we traditionally run 1.5 hours, which listen, Joe and I can sit here for 3 hours. We can also sit and listen to a podcast for an hour and a half. Maybe not everyone can. And so appreciate all of you that have listened to all those either on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, etc. We are going to try to do a faster one for you today. Hopefully sub an hour.
Yeah, no worries. All right. So today we're going through the Draft and Drafts podcast, top 12 to 18, 15-ish dynasty quarterbacks. Excuse me. I have my own rankings. Dave has his own rankings. I put together a consolidated rankings and I'm going to break them up into tiers based on the average rank. And then we're going to go through some of the ones that me and Dave have the widest divergences of opinion on. But without further ado, we're going to get to our QB1 and QB2. We have them interchangeable. You have 1, 1, 2. I have them flip-flopped 1 and 2. To me, that's a clear tier, S tier, which is Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. Now, I don't think we have much to say here, but Dave, why don't you pick one and talk about why you think they're QB1, which I think you had Mahomes, and I'll talk about Allen.
Yeah, so so the only thing I disagree with, I don't think that they're in their own tier.
Okay.
So just to put that out there, but we can talk about that after. I think for Mahomes, he's proven that no matter his assets, he can win. And now that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to have the highest fantasy points, but it does. We've seen it before that he can have crazy fantasy point production without a ton of running. And so for me, there's too much skill there to say that we're not going to put him up there. It's kind of like, to me, the Aaron Rodgers of old, where, no matter who he had in his team, well, you pretty much always had Devontae for the bulk of it. But even if he didn't have any other weapon other than Devontae, where Patrick Mahomes has kind of been like that with Kelsey for the last few years, they still produce. And so that to me is why Mahomes is still my QB1. He's getting older, but I mean, he is, to me, the only QB on the only team that has a chance right now that you could even say has a smelling chance to kind of catch up to the Patriots and Brady. But
yeah,
to me, has a very legitimate chance.
So I'll quickly just agree with you on most all of that, except the only other thing I want to mention is that he's also, I think, the only quarterback you can look at on this entire list of quarterbacks and say, yep, he is guaranteed to still be a starting quarterback in 5 years. I don't care what you think about anybody else. Every single player has some sort of, call it some sort of non-zero chance at being somehow, whether it be through injury, age, lack of production on the ground, maybe some has been getting by with something going on, Josh Allen included. I think Mahomes is the only one with so much security because of how successful he's been in the NFL to say, yeah, he's my QB1, even if he's not the highest ceiling in the entire league. Obviously, I think Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, and Lamar maybe have shown they have higher ceilings. He's got the only sure thing for at least another 5 years plus. Like, he's just that sure of a thing.
Yep.
But
no, I totally agree. And that's actually where, when we're going to talk about tiers, that's also where, like, I don't think it's the only two in the S tier based on how I think we graded them. But also, if there would be a smaller tier than what I have, which is 4, I would actually put Mahomes alone for exactly that reason.
That's
so.
cool. Yeah, and I can show the list after to just show why I broke up the tiers the way I did. But we're going to talk about who we would put in which tiers, so I'm not going to bother. But I have Allen as my number one. But I think, again, to me, this is a tier of their own. Allen and Mahomes is just a choice of upside versus longevity. I think Allen has a hair higher of an upside just because he gets you 10 to 15 rushing touchdowns a year. Like, granted, Mahomes isn't a slouch on the ground, but he's not giving you that rushing floor that Josh Allen provides. And Allen gives you that elite ceiling. But I think, I'm sorry, but I'm sure you're not alone in hearing it. Maybe it's because we're in New England, but you hear about all these terrible passes and terrible turnovers Josh Allen makes. The only drawback to his game is he really that great of a real life quarterback? Of course, he's a great real life quarterback, but he's not on the same level as Mahomes as far as quarterbacking goes. His own, maybe there's a chance you can see when he's 33 and that rushing floor disappears and he's
I don't.
more like a Dak type. Is he really
Well, I don't. And I don't
a
have all
S
the.
tier anymore?
I don't know the interceptions from before, but I'll say he runs more. But the QB he kind of reminds me of is Ben Roethlisberger, where he's always good. You never want to play against Ben Roethlisberger, but at the same time, you kind of didn't think he was going to really win it all. Josh Allen was more dynamic with his running, but you always kind of thought, yeah, they might make that bad play, and they could still come back in a 2-minute drill or something like that to win the game. But it's I don't know, being a Pats fan and watching Ben go so many times against Tom, to me, is just kind of Josh just kind of reminds me of Ben.
Yeah, I should have maybe had some stats queued up. I wish I could have. Oh, yes, touchdown interception ratio. Yeah, it's not bad. He's thrown 18, 14, 15, 10 touchdowns last 4 years. Again, he's still almost a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio and a 90 plus QB rating. So it's not bad by any means, but it's not Tom Brady levels or Aaron Rodgers prime levels or Patrick Mahomes levels, which were like, 30-4 touchdown to interception ratio or 36-7. Like, he's throwing double digit nearing 20 interceptions
Yeah,
a season sometimes.
and Ben was like 21-16, 29-13, 28-14,
Yeah.
34-16,
Yep. Very
33-10,
similar. That's a
27,
really
very
good comp.
similar.
All right. Awesome. So let's get into just based on the averages. I put Allen and Mahomes at S tier because their average rank for us was 1.5 each, whereas the next closest was 3.5 and 4 and 4.5. So it was a clear break in a two position break. So the next quarterbacks in our rankings are our QB3 would be Lamar Jackson. You had him at QB4. I had him at QB3. I can explain since I had him a little higher. I'll explain. I think Lamar is a 2-time NFL MVP. He just got a 5-year contract, so he's got this job security for at least another 4 years. Which, like I just said, the only QB I think has a 5-year horizon is Mahomes. Well, Lamar Jackson has at least a 3-year, I'd say, runway. He's 27 years old, so he's in the center of his prime, and he gives you the most elite rushing floor in the entire league, coupled with the ability to put up a 30-plus touchdown passing season in an offense that clearly knows how to utilize his abilities. I think he's just the safest rushing QB in the entire league that's not named Josh Allen. He's gotten his team far in the playoffs. Obviously, we're splitting hairs with who we have next. But I had him at QB3, you had him at QB4. I don't think there's too much differentiation here. I'll bring up the one who you had QB3 was Jalen Hurts. Why'd you have Hurts over Allen, or is this just semantics, just like Allen and Mahomes was?
No, I think Hurts is a better passer, and so for me, I think almost to your point, like one, there's slightly less risk of injury to Hurts than there is to Lamar Jackson because he's just not running as much. Although he is still getting some nice tees with a tush push, and who knows how that carries through with Saquon being there. But even with that, I still think he's elite. He has great weapons to throw to. Lamar has had mixed weapons other than Mark Andrews, whereas Jalen Hurts now has elite weapons that'll be there for projecting the next at least 3 years if they don't move off somebody. And so all of that is why I personally put Jalen Hurts ahead of Lamar Jackson. But I agree to your sentiment, and this just to add there, these 4 were my S tier QBs. Where if I'm because Hurts, Lamar, so I think Hurts is kind of a bad version of Mahomes with a little bit more rushing and a little more rushing TDs historically. We'll see how that translates and maintains. Whereas Josh Allen and Lamar are kind of the same person of like, they don't have the best weapons, but they have pretty good weapons. They still make pretty good passes when they need to, but they also can scramble for 50 to 60 yards a game and kind of a pretty solid floor at like 16, 18 points. The problem what you saw last year, though, if you remember, like Lamar had like terrible start to the season for fantasy production, really hit it on at the end of the season, which maybe that's a sign to come with different coaching or new players, etc., and just kind of getting in the groove with some of the rookies. But I'm going to go off the whole year and kind of historical versus just a small sample size, and that's why I had Hurts slightly ahead of Lamar.
Yeah, that's fair. I guess the only reason I really had Lamar ahead of Hurts is because he's on my team. No, no, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Lamar has the contract extension that Hurts hasn't gotten yet, which I think is a big part of a lot of the decisions I make around some of these positions where you're trying to split hairs when you're like, who do I put ahead? Do I put Saquon or Jacobs further ahead? And it's like until like Saquon got a contract and Jacobs didn't. So, or they both did now, but at the time you might have said, oh, like Saquon got a contract and Jacobs didn't. That's a tiebreaker for me. And then so just again, it's funny. So based on our rankings, we had Stroud and Hurts only a half ranking apart in average. So to me, they have to be in the same tier. The last member based on these averages that would be in this next tier here is CJ Stroud. And I had him at QB4. You had him at QB6. And maybe I'm just a Hurts hater. I don't really understand. He is 2 years younger than Lamar, or a year and a half younger than Lamar. But I had Stroud in the A tier because he's the only quarterback that has the potential right now to be Mahomes, but also be at least 5 years younger than Mahomes. Like there's very few quarterbacks that the only other quarterbacks I think have these similar trajectory as him in terms of passing prowess is maybe like a Joe Burrow type who's 27, or like Trevor Lawrence who's 25, or Dak or who's 30. Like it's just like all the guys that maybe
I'm surprised you're not putting Brock in there just for a great passer.
Yeah, I think Brock's just I haven't seen enough from him on a points per game standpoint to put him even close to these top two tiers. Like these guys are all everything.
But you also got, I mean, he's now had more proven success compared to CJ Stroud.
That's not true at all. That you can't say that at all with a straight face. CJ Stroud put up like a historic rookie season. Brock Purdy put up like I don't know, early in career, Jared Goff's season.
I'm not just talking fantasy numbers. I'm not actually talking performance. I mean, he made it to the conference championships and the Super Bowl in his first two times managing the team as a quarterback.
Oh yeah, so, if we're doing NFL QB tiers, maybe I move him up a little bit.
I think that all ties together of he's a winner and he's kind of doing what's asked. He's very consistent on his floor. And so, like, sure, does he have the upside? No. But as far as just a really good passer, Brock Purdy is.
Well, I think this is a good polar. Actually, it's funny you bring that up. That is the most polarizing quarterback on our rankings. We had an 11 place disconnect on that. You had him at QB5. I had him at QB16. And I bet you that most people probably have him somewhere between the two of us. I would say the big thing with Brock, and we'll eventually get to him in more detail, though, is that as far as a dynasty asset is concerned, I think a lot of people, no matter what, until he gets that second contract, everyone's going to go, is he really like that good, or is he just a flash in the pan? He is a 7th round pick. It's always going to be held against him until it's not. Like, it's one of those weird things that you can't get around. Amon-Ra St. Brown, his rookie year, put up an insane finish to his rookie season, and he was still going in the 7th round of startups the following year. Like, it was just like people were like, yeah, good start, but he's still a 5th round pick or whatever he was, 4th round pick. Like, I think Brock, unfortunately, will have that stink where, as a dynasty asset, Stroud's going to retain that value of like, he was the number 2 overall pick and he backed it up. Whereas like, oh, Purdy, he was surrounded by 5 all-pro skill position players like Christian McCaffrey and George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel. All were first team or second team all-pro skill. Not to say that doesn't mean Brock Purdy's not good, but there's always going to be some little argument around like, well, was it Brock Purdy or is it the fact that he's throwing all these great players? Whereas like Stroud, like you mentioned last episode, came into the year with an unproven Nico Collins and a rookie Tank Dell, who is the smallest person we've ever seen. I think I'd use a magnifying glass to find him. And it's like, okay, so now we're saying, okay, did he have 2 all-pro receivers, or did Stroud just elevate everyone around him? He gives off these vibes that are very similar to Mahomes in a sense that I think Brady, oh my God, spoiler alert, I think Purdy gives off a lot of Tom Brady vibes where it's like
100%.
Purdy doesn't make the mistake. Purdy may not make all the passes. The big difference is he doesn't make the mistakes that a lot of quarterbacks make, which is kind of what Brady's calling card was. And of course, he could be the next Tom Brady. And I'm not going to say, oh, he's definitely not. I just think I'm reluctant to buy into that right now. And I think a lot of people, as far as a dynasty asset is concerned, if you're going to spend a top draft pick to go get a quarterback right now, I'd feel safer going to get CJ Stroud, knowing he's going to retain his value better than someone like if Brock Purdy comes out next year and fucking struggles for 3 to 4 weeks, the noise is going to come out. Oh, maybe he was just a one hit wonder. Whereas like Stroud struggles for a few weeks and they go, oh, he's just getting used to the new receiving core. Stephon Diggs is a distraction.
Well, just to know, he was only 0.7 points per game below Stroud last season. He had a better completion percentage and a better passer rating. So just again, pure quarterbacking. Let it be known.
Let it be known, everybody. I think it's a really good fact that I think a lot, and I agree that I think Purdy is somehow still underrated as a dynasty quarterback. But based on where I put them in my dynasty rankings, just off sheer fact alone, I couldn't put him in the A tier. Maybe you might have just convinced me to move him to the B tier. For where our rankings sit, he's a half rank away. So I think
and just to add for the folks at home, I have Brock Purdy ahead of CJ Stroud, and he was my 5th QB. And
I'll show our rankings at the end.
Yeah, he's in a tier with 2 other QBs that are also young, and I think that there's just more upside potentially with those other well, especially with Andrew Mitchell, which we'll get to in a second. But yeah, I just think if you're talking about Mahomes or a Brady type who's just really good at passing and moving the ball, he has amazing players, but he has also done it with bad players on injuries where Debo's been out and he's had to fill in with other gaps. Like I do agree he has the best talent around him on paper. So I'm never going to discredit that. At the same time, he has done more than the others have done in the past with that talent. And so I think that's also kind of the point.
That's true. Jimmy G had the same talent pool and didn't do shit.
Correct.
Didn't do fucking shit. I wish we had a soundboard. Can we get a soundboard?
Yeah, I have one. Here, I'll send it to you.
Do you have any I think you should leave sound? I didn't do fucking shit. All right. Let's move on. Next tier. This was a super log jam tier. Thank you. A super log jam tier here. Based on our rankings, ranked average of 8.5. There's a clear tier break here, by the way. Lamar, Hurts, and Stroud were our average rank 3.5, 4.5, 5 ranked player. The next closest player was where is he? Caleb Williams. This is Caleb. Pretend it's Caleb. Caleb Williams at rank 8.5. That's the next closest. So basically, this is a big murky tier where say what you want about who I have at 5 or in who you have at 5. There's a big enough divergence in our opinions of them that this has to be B tier for me. There's too much speculation. There's too many pros and cons for us to confidently put them in the A tier. I had him at QB8. You had him at QB9. It's actually the only close ranking we had in this entire tier. I'll just say he's the most polished prospect from a fantasy lens since Andrew Luck. He may not be the best passing quarterback prospect as Trevor Lawrence was regarded as, but as far as his ability to run the ball on the ground and make plays with his legs, but also extend plays, he's not just a take off and run quarterback like maybe Jaden Daniels or Anthony Richardson or all these guys who come out with these brilliant physical traits. He's a pass first quarterback who also was able to elevate a receiver room last year that consisted of Brendan Rice and Taj Washington or whoever they're like. He was working with very minimal talent. Wasn't at a SEC school or a Big Ten school. He was in the Pac-12 and he was still the back-to-back has been regarded as the QB1 of this class for 2 full years. Going to a situation with Keenan Allen, DJ Moore, and Rome Odunze catching passes on top of having a capable running back room. The cards are aligned for him to be put in a position to succeed. You've heard it 1,000 times. We don't really need to explain it too much, but he's just, to me, he's such a bona fide asset. And for us, he's the QB6. That's crazy.
Yeah, I think Caleb Williams is interesting. It's hard for me to put him. I think I had him at 8 QB.
Well, it's funny. He was both our 8 and 9, but he comes in as an average of 6 to show, or our 6 because it shows we are so disconnected on the next 4 guys.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the challenge, right? Is for me, just in a dynasty setting, there's a lot of upside there. I think the stat that's been shared a bunch of times around never having or only once ever having a 4,000-yard passer in Chicago, where he's not Jane Daniels going to run the ball a million times or Josh Allen type. It's just interesting to see where he's going to play out. I think you need Caleb Williams almost to be Tom Brady-esque, where he's kind of a West Coast kid or a warm weather kid. And he needs to be really efficient in his passing, as Tom was, especially later, and when he started to hit his stride. So I'm curious to see how he plays out. I could easily see him be QB 14 and kind of live around there just because he's in Chicago. And right now his talent looks great. Keenan Allen's going to get hurt for at least 4 games, and then DJ Moore's probably going to be gone in 2 years. And so you have those things lingering. He still has a Dunze, which is super exciting, and you can have a lot of potential there with both of those. But can he be elite in Chicago with that one weapon or whatever else they can add? I don't know. There's just a lot of question marks coming to the future. So I say right now, I think he's potential to have a decent season. I don't think he'll actually be top 10 this season, but if I were to draft somebody, first overall, QBs don't usually miss. At least they usually still have a job 5 years later, which is kind of just something that to catch.
Totally fair. All right, moving on to the next one. This is our second most polarizing player, Joe Burrow. An average of 9 comes in at our 7th quarterback in our rankings in the B tier. I had him at QB 5. You had him at QB 13. So maybe I can give you a little bit of reason. Or actually, why don't you tell me why you hate Joe Burrow so much, and I'll try to tell you why you're wrong.
I don't hate Joe Burrow. I think he's 4 years in. He's had 2 injury-prone seasons. He has a lot of potential, but I'm worried about what's going to happen when either Jamar Chase or T. Higgins, one of them leaves. What kind of happens to Joe Burrow in question?
That's a good point.
So I'm just kind of in this camp where it's like, I'd love to see, I think going to last year, I probably had him 3 or 4, maybe 5, like at worst, because he had 2 back-to-back good seasons. And so maybe this is maybe a little bit of recency bias, almost like what everyone's doing with Eckler. Eckler's obviously older than the Joe Burrow situation, and you can usually have QBs last longer, but he's just in this weird camp where I think he's a winner. I just want to make sure he can stay healthy, and I want him to kind of prove that to what we know his ability is. But even in his best season thus far, he's been QB 4, and that's his best. Second best was 7 in PPR. So I don't know. I just think he's interesting.
All good points. I've never thought about the fact that Burrow's basically never played without Jamar Chase. Like his only season where he tore his ACL in like week 6 or 7 or whenever that was. But he's always had T. Higgins, and then following that, he's always had T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. I've never thought at all about, man, how would he look if he was running the same offense that even Patrick Mahomes had last year? Or, some of these players who've shown to elevate their offenses, or even like CJ Stroud's offense last year. Like, no, not even close to the offense he had. And him being injury prone multiple times, and he seems like he should be a lot younger. You would think a guy who's still on his rookie contract, he'd probably be in the 24, 25 range. Joe Burrow's halfway through his age 27 season. He'll be 28 by the time the season's over. He's certainly not young. So I think you're right. Maybe I should have him a little lower than I do. I didn't realize he was so old. I say so old as a 34-year-old, but like, he's older than Lamar, and Lamar has been in the league for 6 seasons. So it's like, it's weird to think about that perspective. I do think he's shown us that, one, he can be a franchise quarterback by virtue of the fact that he's led the Bengals to did he go to the Super Bowl against the Rams, right?
Yep.
Went to the Super Bowl. He's gone to the AFC Championship game. He's led them to winning seasons or winning records while he's been healthy, all in what seems like only 2 full healthy seasons. So in his 2 fully healthy years, he's he's got the job security. He's put up super strong fantasy production. He has the supporting cast that, I would love to see how he's going to be without Jamar Chase. You know what? We might never fucking see that. He might not be without Jamar Chase till he's 33. So
sure, but at the same time, tell me how he's so drastically better than Brock Purdy.
I think it goes back to the draft capital. I think you just know that Burrow's always going to have that stability, whereas like you still always, until we're told otherwise, I would still always worry that my Brock Purdy share could blow up to 0 at any point. So I can never value him the same way as Joe Burrow until he gets that 4-year, $220 million extension.
I don't know.
And I'll say, okay.
Justin Fields, though.
Right. Justin Fields didn't get an extension. So it's like, until he gets that extension, that's when I would worry. Then he'll be safely in, and until he puts up a 20 points per game season, then I can't put him. I think, the combination, to go back to Stroud's combination of draft capital and points per game season lends us to believe he's going to be a guy who puts up 22 points per game in the near future. Whereas I don't think Purdy necessarily has shown us that he can do that yet. He's put up good seasons, very good, to the equivalent of maybe like what Kirk Cousins did for most of his career, where he was at QB 9 to 12 range, but not necessarily that league-breaking elite QB1 upside that I think these first 5 showed us they can be your 22, 24, 25 point per game quarterbacks. All right, so we're moving on to the next quarterback in our rankings. We have Kyler Murray. Actually, this is a tie. Kyler Murray and Anthony Richardson both come in with an average rank of 10 for our QB 8 and QB 9. Yeah, QB 8 and QB 9. I was a little higher on Kyler at 9. You had him at 11. You were high on Anthony Richardson at 7. I had him at QB 13. So why don't you, to kick it off, talk to me about why are you so high on Anthony Richardson and what makes you put him at QB 7 overall?
Yeah, I'll hit both quickly. Anthony Richardson had an amazing start. He really just showed to be Josh Allen 2.0, but better at rushing. And so for me, I'm going to give him that upside to put him in this kind of mid tier where it's like he's not top 6. I had him at 7, where I don't think he's proven, but he easily could be top 6 with just doing it for a season and staying healthy. And that's why I have Anthony Richardson as high as 7 on my board. And he's just, again, young. He has a decent team around him right now that looks promising. So that's Anthony Richardson. Kyler, I had Kyler further down because of his history and performance. Kind of similar to Burrow, where he's had 2 good seasons. He's had injuries in 3. So he hasn't had more in 5 seasons. He's only had 2 full seasons played, which is a small guy anyways. And we've already had rumors at times that they were going to draft a QB and replace Kyler. And so I just don't know. Like, I realistically think if Kyler gets injured or doesn't play well this season, he's gone.
You think so?
You just drafted Marvin Harrison. You just drafted Trey McBride. He has his best weapons. If he gets injured and is not there, he can't be reliable. He'll be injured the last 4 seasons consecutively, not playing a full season. And we all know the best skill is availability, and he doesn't have it. And so he has to play a full season, I think, and he almost has to be a top 10 QB. Like, if he's not a top 10 QB, I also think with all the weapons and investment they put into the offense, do they consider moving on from Kyler? And what happens also on pure football performance? Do they bring a new coaching staff that's like, hey, we like Kyler, but we're going to move off him, go to someone else? So I think when we talk about before, too, of job security, Kyler's someone who, too, if he gets replaced in Arizona, I don't know if he starts somewhere else right away. He probably goes and backs up, and then if he gets a chance, he probably does take over and start again. But yeah, he's kind of like a better version of the old Tennessee Titans QB. I can't remember his name.
Marcus Mariota.
Yep.
Interesting. So I will say the big thing here for me with Kyler is that why I had him ahead of where you had him was, I mean, in his 4 healthy seasons or whatever he's done, he's finished as putting up no less than 18 or 19 points per game per season every single season, which is top 8 QB territory. He has the contract extension for stability. I don't think he's getting replaced, even if he has a down year. I don't think he's going to have a down year, but obviously it could happen. And like, if he has an atrocious year where they put themselves in a position to draft a quarterback, of course. I think there are very few quarterbacks on this list where if they play a full season and play their team into a position to draft in the top 3 next year, and there's a quarterback that's worth it, they're not going to replace them. Like, I think if the Jordan Love and the Packers play so bad that the Packers have a top 2 pick next year, they're just going to let him go. He's out on his last year of his temp contract, and they're going to say, you were terrible. Great. You had a great half season in 2023. Sick. We have a top 2 pick. We're taking Shadur Sanders. Just like Will Levis, I think it's in that same boat. I think Tua's an approve it type deal. If he doesn't put up a great season, he's gone. Like, I think there are so many quarterbacks that don't have the contract to say that if they play themselves into a situation where their team is picking the top 3, they're gone. Just like I think Kyler's in the same boat.
Hold on. Did you mention the Tua? I got to bring that up. I really think in some of those situations where you need to separate the football versus fantasy.
That's what I'm saying. If Tua plays the Dolphins into a situation where they go 3-14 next year,
but Tua just
he's
threw
gone.
The most passing yards in the NFL last season. Like,
I'm just saying, if he plays them full 17, 18 game season and they have a top 2 pick next year, they're going to draft a QB and let Tua go.
Sure, if he plays the whole season, he's not injured, I would agree.
Right, just like I think Kyler's in the same boat. If he actually plays the Cardinals,
I don't think if Kyler. I think if Kyler plays all season, there's no way they're going to be top 5 in picking. I just think there's just no way.
Right.
But I will say, I think
if it
more of the
did,
Kyler thing is he gets injured. I think if he
yeah.
gets injured and doesn't play a full season, or he underperforms in those games he did have all these weapons, I don't see how you're sticking with him. Is
Yeah.
my point, where I don't think anyone else in the list up there, no one else is doing that. If they get injured and it doesn't go well, or if they play themselves bad that next season, none of them are getting replaced next season. The only one that would be is Kyler in either scenario, either injury or plays in bad.
It's so funny because I had pulled together because I was comparing Richardson and Kyler for my own ranking purposes. It's so funny. Was really close to having them back to back in my rankings, and I pulled together these stats a while ago to try to compare Kyler and Richardson. So it's really funny that we have them exactly identical in average rank. But here are some stats just based on a per game basis or based on an efficiency basis, not based on anything else. This past season, Kyler, again, this is a very short season for Richardson, but Kyler had a completion percentage of 66%. Richardson had a completion percentage of 59%. Kyler had a PFF passing grade of 66. Richardson had a PFF passing grade of 57, which that PFF just grades based on your ability to fit balls into tight windows. It's not based on your receiver drops the ball, doesn't matter, gets open, doesn't matter. It's did you put the ball where it should have been? Their rookie season PFF passing grade. So to scale Kyler back a little bit, Kyler was a 61 versus Richardson's 57. So very similar. But again, Kyler had the edge. Now we go to college stats. Just say who's actually a better prospect? Kyler's PFF passing grades his final 2 years in college were 86 and 94. Anthony Richardson's PFF passing grades his final 2 years in college were 59 and 71. Their completion percentages their last 2 years in college, Kyler was 86% and 69%. Anthony Richardson was 59% and 53%. Basically,
Yeah.
Kyler has done every single thing better than Anthony Richardson has ever done at every equal stage of their careers. I just can't look at them in good confidence say, yeah, so Kyler's 4 years older than Richardson, so I'm going to give him a massive downgrade. I think Richardson has shown he can win at the end of. He led the Cardinals to the playoffs one season. He's put up tons of fantasy production. He has better weapons now. I think Marvin Harrison's a better receiver than anything that the Colts have. The only thing that's going against him is the fact that I don't think the Cardinals are as complete of a team, so maybe their team doesn't do as well. But I don't think Richardson's done anything to prove to me that he has any sort of job security in the NFL. He is not a complete passer whatsoever. He's just a freak athlete.
Yeah, but that's why I have him. I don't have him there because he's a good passer. I have him there because he in his first 3 games he rushed for 40 yards, 35 yards, and 56 yards. I mean, the tracker on that is insane. So I'm not putting Anthony Richardson because he's a good passer. I just need him to make 15 completions a game. And I think it's now that
your knock against Kyler was that he could be gone as a starting quarterback, and then you're discrediting all of the things that Richardson does poorly as a passer, and you're saying, "Well, I don't care about his passing." Well,
yeah, my point was if Richardson has a bad year, he only played 3.5, 4 games last season, something like that. If he has a bad year, it still is to me. If I'm the coach and the team, it's his rookie season.
That's true.
Giving him the chance to grow into that player, that if he still
that's a really good point.
If he goes 1-to-1 TD to interception, I don't give a shit because I didn't pick him to be a 65% completion QB with 2-to-1 TDs to interceptions. I picked him because he's going to rush for 50 yards a game. And now, also remember too, they didn't have Jonathan Taylor start last season, so you also didn't have
true.
as running back to see how much does he actually rush versus not, and how dynamic does that make it? Does he dump off more? All those other things. And now I forget who the guy was with them that did pretty well in those first few games.
Zach Moss.
Yeah, Zach Moss. Thank you. So you have all those things where I think if he has a bad season and they finish last in their division, they're not saying we're drafting a QB in the first round next year, right? They're going to give him another year. Now they might draft a QB in the 4th round to have someone else to compete with and have someone just in case he has 2 or 3 bad seasons in a row. But my point was they're not moving next season into the first round, or if they're a top 10 pick and picking a QB. The Cardinals, I think, would if it was either playing poorly or injury because he can't stay healthy. And they can't rely if they can't rely on their QB that they invested all the money into, then they need to get another QB. Where Richardson, same thing. I think if Richardson starts to get injured again, he has 2 incomplete seasons. Now it's if we do get that QB in round 3, but they're not replacing him going into next season for any reason, in my opinion. For Kyler, I think there is reasons that if he performs or gets injured in certain ways and times, I don't think he's coming back to start for the Cardinals.
That's
And
fair. I got
on
all
that.
good points on Richardson that I actually hadn't thought about. So again, I think they're very similar caliber players. They have different ceilings and floor, different skill sets, but I think they're at the end of the day they do have similarities to their game. The last quarterback in this tier was Brock Purdy. He comes in at an average of 10.5. You had him at quarterback 5. I had him at quarterback 16. We've talked about him kind of a lot, so I don't know if there's much more to add other than maybe based on this how much you argued in favor of him. Maybe I move him up to maybe we move him up to the middle of this tier. I could not in confidence put him into tier A. I think he's a great quarterback. I don't think he's a fantasy superstar. I don't think, again, we just mentioned that as far as fantasy assets go, Kyler and Richardson are giving you, if they're meet their potential, they're giving you 20 plus point per game seasons.
But that was really close to what Purdy did in his first full season. He finished QB6 in our league. If you did 2 point per passing touchdown or 6 point instead of our 5, I wonder if he actually finishes higher than 6 or if he's around 5 or
Yeah,
something like that.
it'd be good to see.
So that's the thing. Like Purdy is super consistent in 6 point per passing at 20 points per game. And in ours,
Yeah.
he's right around 18 to 20 every single game. And so to me, to have that floor, that's the thing. Like where he was QB6 in our league in his first full season as a QB, he proves he can win. He did all the, to me, he did all the Joe Burrow stuff after the injury that you want to see in years 1 and 2, but through like whatever 7 games and then a full season with weapons. Again, Joe Burrow has the same thing. Like that to me, where Brock Purdy did all that. And again, if he starts seeing a bunch of injury bugs, or like if he loses McCaffrey, if he loses Debo, and all of a sudden he's not completing on these passes, but because I'm a fan of, because I have him on my team, I end up watching a lot of his game footage. And if there was a couple games on, I'd put the 49ers on exclusively and just watch him pass. Like he threw so many great balls. And that to me was like, I don't see a lot of QBs even in our list right now that just throw really good balls to our receivers on target all the time. And I don't know where he actually ranked last season for completion percentage, but it's got to be up there.
Yeah. I think the big thing that, again, because I think it is important, like it's hard to make a dynasty fantasy quarterback list when the stability is so important, where I think if Brock Purdy had a contract, I think you put him in the A tier. If he had a 5-year contract, you go, he's a stable quarterback. He's a successful quarterback. The team believes in him. He's shown he can win. The main thing is that the rug can get pulled out from under him at any time, and that's the big warrior, which is why I couldn't put him up next to guys I think have the stability and the same floor as him and a higher ceiling. That I'm just like, until I'm willing to be wrong. I don't think Brock Purdy's the type of quarterback who's going to hurt me. I think he's definitely a good quarterback. I'm not worried about him hurt. I'm not. Oh, I think you're muted right now, but I'm not worried about him hurting me.
The difference is how many pass attempts he actually makes. So he made, between the other top QBs, at least for pass completion percentage, he made 130 to 150 less pass attempts, and he was the sixth highest completion percentage at 69%.
Christian McCaffrey effect.
Tied with the others. The other highest completion percentage last season are Tua, Derek Carr, Dak Prescott, Jared Goff, and Josh Allen. And so,
damn, that's quite a list.
I know we don't have Dak in here, which is probably close. They're coming up soon. And I know we don't have Tua technically up here yet too, but it's hard to not say that those guys are there. And again, he doesn't have to make so many pass attempts right now because he has Christian McCaffrey as well. He's always had Christian McCaffrey. So I also wanted that question, like, could he make 600 pass attempts a year if he doesn't have Christian McCaffrey, and say he ends up having Elijah Mitchell or someone else, like he doesn't have just CMC going crazy as a rusher? Like, I think he could. I don't see why he couldn't. And so it's kind of that you don't know what you don't know. But I love what I've seen so far. And so again, we'll leave it there.
No problem. All right, we're gonna go to the next tier. His ears must be ringing. Dak Prescott comes in at average rank 11.5, so a full rank behind Brock Purdy. You had him at QB 8. I had him at QB 15. Talk to me a little bit about Dak. Why'd you have him so high? Why is he a top 10 quarterback for you?
Yeah, I think that he's just the guy. Like, if you think about all the older guys, like over 30,
he's the only quarterback over 30 on our list, on our top 18.
Yeah. So I think I'm going to just go. Yeah. So I think if you think of all those people, the Genos, the Russ, the Kirks, the Stafford, the Jared Goffs, Jared Goff's right around 30, 29.6. And like Mayfield, he's just the only one that's in that, been around a long enough time. He's had a lot of injuries and challenging teams at different times. But he has, an elite wide receiver 1. And if you look at, other than, I guess that's not true, because the only one that has an elite wide receiver that isn't necessarily a proven QB is Jefferson. The other ones all have a proven QB, but I think for Dak, he just has this nice dynamic where it's hard to root against him because he's proven it time and time and again that he's good. Is he going to be QB1? No. But I just think that he has proven kind of time and time again that he can be in the top 10. He could be QB1 if he has a good enough season. And he showed it in the back half of last season, like he was QB1 for the last whatever how many games. So that's where I just think if they start leaning on him more without Ezekiel, well, I guess now Ezekiel's back, but with whatever the run game is going to be, I feel like it's going to be a ton of passing. Yeah, I think it's going to be a ton of passing for the Cowboys. I'm excited for Dak, and that's why I had him at 8, right behind Purdy, Stroud, Richardson, but right ahead of Williams, Tua, Daniels, Burrow.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I really can't argue with anything you said about Dak. I think Dak's an underrated, vastly underrated QB. I had him at QB 15, and I even still think that that's a high, or not high, but I like him a lot. I think the biggest drawback for him is he's 31. He's got a 3 in front of his age now. I don't think he's never going to increase in value. So I couldn't possibly put him any higher on this list for the sheer fact that as a dynasty ranking list, you have to always be navigating those waters of production versus value, because at the end of the day, this is not just a game. It's not just redraft. Points aren't the only thing that matters.
So just also, I'm just looking at Dak in our league since his whole time, he has had 2 non-full seasons. Outside of those 2 non-full seasons, he has been QB 7, 10, 14, 2, 8, 3.
Yeah, he's incredible. And it's funny because, he lost a lot of his luster because of the lack of rushing production last season in 2022. So everyone started downgrading him because if you recall, before he broke his ankle or whatever, he was up there with the Josh Allen types as far as rushing floor went, on top of his prolific passing. And then after that ankle injury, he didn't do much in 2022, but he came back last year with a vengeance. He put up a decent rushing floor, but he led the league in passing touchdowns. He showed that he's always elevating players around him. I wouldn't say he made CeeDee Lamb, but he certainly brought CeeDee Lamb from a mid wide receiver 1, fringe type wide receiver 2 to being the number 1 overall wide receiver in the league, and one of two wide receivers to ever put up 400 fantasy points in a season. This can't be discredited. I think maybe I'm a little too low on Dak, but he comes in at our wide receiver 10, our quarterback 10 overall. Next on this list, yeah, our average 11, our QB 10 overall, or QB 11 overall. You're right. So next we have another tie. We have, he's not on here. Jaden Daniels and Trevor Lawrence. Jaden Daniels is the only quarterback that we both agreed on exactly at quarterback 12. So this will be an interesting one for us to talk about. And then Trevor Lawrence came in at quarterback 12. Also, you had him at QB 14. I had him at QB 10. So talk to me a little bit about Jaden Daniels versus Trevor Lawrence. I think they are completely polar opposite reasons why that we have them ranked at this average of 12.
I'm going to be honest. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to be honest. If we ranked more than 14 if I ranked more than 14 quarterbacks, T-Law would be lower than that. So I am not bullish on T-Law at all. I think T-Law's very middle of the pack. To me, he's just
14 would be almost dead middle of the pack, by the way.
I think he's more, I think he's your more hyped Baker Mayfield and just stayed on the same team. But Jaden Daniels, yeah, you're buying the upside. You're buying what he can be. You're buying that he has some talent around him with Eckler and McLaurin. If you want to call Dotson talent, you can call it Dotson. And they drafted some good players too. So I think you're buying the upside, and you've seen some flashes of what the Commanders can be at different times. So yeah, that's all you're really buying there. Is again, you're buying Anthony Richardson, but before he's done anything. It's kind of how I view Jaden Daniels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't have anything to disagree with you on Daniels. I think I think in one quarterback, it's a little different than Superflex. I think he doesn't give you quite the safety that some of the other quarterbacks might provide in Superflex, or I might be a little bit scared off him. But in one quarterback, he's got that upside, which is really all you shoot for out of quarterback. I don't want QB 8 through 15 in one QB. I want the QB 1 to 5, or I want to just not have don't want to think about quarterback. So it's I want to go for the guy that can be league breaking. And I think Daniels has that upside. and he has a decent supporting cast. I don't know. I think Cliff Kingsbury, I've always heard this. I don't know it for sure, but he coached Kyler for his first couple of years in the NFL and led a pretty successful campaign with Kyler on both through the air and on the ground, and led the Cardinals to the playoffs. I think he could put together the same similar formula with Daniels. He has a reliable wide receiver one. He has some air quote weapons around him with Eckler and Ertz and Dotson and whatever. At least they're not no name players like KJ Osborne and Kendrick Bourne like the Patriots are dealing with. So I think QB12 is a save. I think it's baking in the upside with some of the downside risks contemplated. And then Trevor Lawrence, I think he has, again, I think he still just has such a high ceiling and such a safe floor, because I think no matter what happens to him, how poorly or middling he plays, he's going to get a chance for at least another 4. He's going to get a second contract. He's not going to go the way of Sam Bradford. He's shown enough in the NFL where he's shown he can lead a team to the playoffs. He's shown he can elevate some players around him. Of course, he makes mistakes. I think last year he was pretty banged up. He had that knee brace on for like the midway through the season. I'm not going to make an excuse. He clearly underperformed, but I think the rest of the quarterbacks after him have the same floor as Trevor Lawrence with not nearly the ceiling Trevor Lawrence has. I think Trevor Lawrence has that Josh Allen ceiling within him. He clearly has an untapped. I'm not saying I'm not even saying there's a 20% chance that even happens. It's maybe a 5%. He has the size, the speed, the scrambling ability. He just doesn't do it for one reason or another.
If you're just joining us for the first time, please don't discredit all of our takes because of that one take. That's just Joe. He just had a little bit to drink.
It's okay. I think we would have already lost credibility when you said that Brock Purdy is just not shiny CJ Stroud. But so again, that's why I had Lawrence so high, mostly for his stability. I just can't see him really losing a ton of value. I think he definitely has lost value. I think maybe I'm a little too high at QB10. I think I might actually prefer Daniels over Trevor Lawrence right now. And I think in a vacuum, if I'm trying to win, I'll happily send Trevor Lawrence away for Dak Prescott plus right now. If I can get Dak Prescott in a second for Tila, I would do that in a heartbeat. So I don't know why I have Tila so high. You helped uncover some things, but the last 2 quarterbacks in this tier, one of them you didn't rank, but I'm putting him in this tier because I think it's asinine that you wouldn't rank him, is Tua at an average of 13.5. You had him at QB10. I had him at QB17. And then Justin Herbert, who is my QB7, your QB unranked. So he was too high in my rankings for me to just not include him in this list.
No, that's probably an oversight to me. I think it's more he was injured last season. His season prior played a full season. He was QB11. And I think that was when some weapons were injured, fine. But like he also doesn't have those weapons anymore. So
he was also injured.
Not in 2022. He played all 17 games.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And so I'm banking on that information. So I think that's kind of my question with Herbert is like, he doesn't, that talent that he did have, that he had 2 good seasons with, is old and gone. And so I think I like Herbert. And I think going into last season, even though he finished the prior season QB11, I probably would have put him in the top 6. I mean, for sure, in like the top 6 or 8. So I'm not surprised that if you want to hold on to that viewpoint of where he can be, that you want to have him higher than that. I think for me, the challenge is I just don't know. He's definitely not in that same camp. I mean, that's crazy. His team's terrible.
I'm putting him ahead of
but hold on. You got to look at the coaching staff. You got to look at the weapons he has to throw to. Like he just doesn't. He's going to be a bad version of Brock Purdy with a terrible team. Like I just don't know. I don't know how Herbert's going to have even more than averaging more than 16 points per game this season. I just don't know how it's going to happen. And
that's a good point.
I think he's really good, and I do. Like I think if you dropped him in Cincinnati, we'd probably be talking about him just as good as Joe Burrow, in my opinion, or like really freaking close. So yeah, like I think he had proven it with in their prime, great guys. He has had 2 seasons that he has not proven it, and that's what I'm leaning on more right now, where he also has a lot of question marks in the weapon room with a coaching staff that we have been proven in college and so forth that likes to run the ball over pass the ball. And so all that is what I'm why I just have kind of like written off Herbert in my head. Not that I, if I had him on my team, he's my best QB. Not that I wouldn't start him, but I wouldn't be thrilled about it.
No, that's fair. I had him at QB7. I mean, even if I slot him in as QB 16 for you. That makes him an average of 11.5, tied with Dak. So I'm putting him at the top of our C tier, our QB 11 overall.
Let's put Dak in front of Justin.
I think that they're equal. So we're going to put him in front.
That's wild.
Because I had him at a higher rank than you had Dak at. So that's the tiebreaker. I think Herbert has shown he has the capability of a top 5 season. And he's only 26 relative to Dak's 30. I think that, if in the off chance that QJ opens his eyes and Lad McConkey is the real deal, he might have some decent weapons around him this year. I do agree that there is some worries about, are the Chargers going to be a run first offense? Are they building towards a more slower paced game where they focus on winning in the trenches and playing good defense and slowing the game down to a point where Herbert just doesn't have the volume to support being a strong QB1 anymore? So why are we propping him up based on age? Maybe he's a sell candidate. I don't know. It's a little worrisome. But I just think he has too much skill to move him below any of these other guys that I think are either mid or old or unproven. But let's get to Tua. I've let you talk a lot first. Let me just tell you why you're so fucking wrong about Tua. No, I think Tua is also criminally underrated. He was the highest rated passer according to PFF on all passes and deep passes last year. He had one of the quickest time to throw of all passers in the NFL last year. And I'm pretty sure he had a pressure to sack rate that was like under 10% or something, which might have been a lot of him focusing on protecting his head after he went through all those concussions last year in 2022. But those are all really good, strong indicators of being a good passer. The problem is just that the Dolphins have underachieved woefully. And to me, they haven't extended him yet. Still haven't extended him yet. They are rumored to be in on Tom Brady last year. They are rumored to be in on other quarterbacks. Like, it seems to me like if the Dolphins don't believe in him, why should I believe in him? And I think that he's the epitome of, yes, actually a really good real life quarterback with virtually zero upside unless he throws for 4 or 5 touchdowns a game, which you cannot depend on. That's such an anomaly in a quarterback's life that on his days where most of them are going to be 2 or 3 touchdowns, 1.5 to 2.5 touchdown passes per game, he's going to give you 0 on the ground in terms of yardage, 0 in the form of rushing touchdowns, which means he's giving you a floor of like 13 to 14 points per game, which just doesn't cut it on those weeks when you're up against the juggernauts in your leagues and you're depending on Tua to put up 4 or 5 touchdowns. It's got to be disheartening. It's not a guy I want to lean on, which is why I'd say in a super flex, oh my God, if I could have him as my QB3 off the bench, or God forbid a QB2, but I'm stacked with Josh Allen up top or Patrick Mahomes up top, I'm happy with him. But I do not want to pair if I'm in a super flex and my quarterbacks are Tua and Baker, I am worried. I'm so worried about I have Tua and Goff as my quarterbacks. I better be loaded everywhere else. But so tell me why I'm wrong. Why is Tua for you? You had him at QB 10. I had him QB 17.
So yeah, I think he's to me this weird middle ground where he had a great season. I hope that he grows beyond that. I still have the similar concerns to kind of what you said about he only really did it for one season. He was injured for 3, and I think that's more why they were potentially the rumors or smoke of them going off of Tua, was because he was injured for 3 consecutive seasons. You can't have your franchise QB be missing 3 consecutive seasons. It's just not, especially at the beginning of their career. And so he proved it last year, did a full season. That's great. I think that the question is if he can maintain health. He's proven he's a great QB. The next question mark is, can he prove he can be a great QB without Tyreek Hill? And I don't know. He has some other great weapons that we've talked about before, some great running backs. That he has some young running backs there too. He has Jalen Waddle. They just got where they get Pearsall. So
they just got
Pearsall went to the Jack. No, yeah,
he went to the 49ers. They just got
that's right.
I don't know who they didn't get any receivers. Oh, Malik Washington, I think, in like the 6th round.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, Malik Washington. You're right. And then they grabbed Jalen Wright in the 3rd. So I think the question is, like, what does he actually look like post Tyreek era, and can he stay healthy? If all those things remain true, I don't know where Tua is going to go. It'd be hard to think you're going to move off of him. And I think it's also the same thing we said about Richardson, or if you talk about T-Law and his bad first season, or some other guys that were injured at the beginning of the career, last season was his first full season as a QB. And, he's only played, I think, I just looked at it, but I think it's something like 35 games. Like, he's played net like 2 and a little bit of seasons. So in the NFL. So I think it's kind of all those things together that I'm in fact expecting 2 things. One, he takes a further leap this year as a QB to be even more dynamic as a passer with Mike McDaniels. And
You think you take another leap beyond being the best passer in the league last year?
Well, doing it to a higher efficiency than just relying so much on, like, a lot of TDs are stolen by Mostert and A-Chain. So, like,
that's true.
Yes, my hope is that he gets that cannot maintain from running back room. Like, that would be insane if that happens again.
Right?
Not to say it's actually possible.
A-Chain 11 yards per carry next year on 200 carries. That's a 2,000-yard season.
I think unlikely. So I think then the question is, like, can Tua end up getting some more of those TDs that ends up just moving his total fantasy points higher to be in the top 6? And that's why I didn't have him top 6. I kind of put him at 10 because I could see him finish 15. I could see him finish 5. And so to me, it was just a nice safe range where, like, I kind of expect him to, if he plays kind of to his level normal, he's going to be around QB 10 if he in fantasy points. And he could be up or down from there pending true performance. So that's my take on Tua.
Cool. No, I think you nailed it, Dave. We're in our hour 16. There were a couple more quarterbacks I had. We got through 15 quarterbacks consensusly. I had a couple more quarterbacks in my top 15 that we haven't talked about. If you want, I can give you a quick spiel on it, or if we can end it here. Either way, it's up to you.
Just throw them in real quick. Who you got?
All right. So my last 2 quarterbacks at my QB 11 was Drake May, and my QB 14 was Jordan Love. And my quick spiel on Drake May is he's been a top prospect for the last 2 years. He's under a new regime, so it's no longer a traditional Patriots team. The first pick in the Drake May era was a wide receiver. The third pick in the Drake May era was a wide receiver. The second pick in the Drake May era was an offensive tackle. So they're clearly investing in the offense. They've gone out of their way to try to reshape it. They're trying to put weapons around. Of course, they didn't spend up on a free agent, but I think he's been a top quarterback prospect in the NFL draft's eyes for the last 2 full years, on top of the fact that he was the second leading rusher in terms of rushing touchdowns in college football last year, behind only Jaden Daniels, among, like, the Power 5 qualified quarterbacks. I'm not counting your Kent State guy who runs for 16 touchdowns, but he ran for 12 touchdowns last year and 600 yards. And keep in mind, college quarterbacks' rushing yards are impacted by sacks. So every sack is negative rushing yards in college. So he has a rushing floor that's similar to a guy like, not quite Josh Allen, but not as low as Patrick Mahomes, in that 500-yard range, which is a considerable floor that I think there's a chance the Patriots, when they get in the red zone, instead of trying to put a lot of pressure on Drake May to throw this tough back shoulder fade to an inexperienced wide receiver, they might adopt the tush push. They might let Drake May do what he does, or he goes under pressure. He has this ability to put up this rushing floor that I don't think a lot of people think they see when they could look at him, because he just looks like another Mac Jones. And then Jordan Love, I think he, similar to the skill set of Drake May, was he has this pseudo rushing floor. He's not quite a Konami code quarterback, but he's not quite your stand in the pocket, drop back and dump off quarterback. He has some mobility. He has some ability to scramble. It's actually eerily similar to Aaron Rodgers in a sense that he's not rushing for tons of yards, but he can give you that rushing floor. And he showed you that he can be an elite quarterback option. I think the big drawback for him is he doesn't have the contract yet. Once he gets that huge quarterback contract extension, I think there's a chance you move Jordan Love up. If he has a good year this year, you'll see Jordan Love in the top 10 quarterbacks, because he is only 25 years old right now, and Drake May's only 21. So it's like,
yeah, and I think that what I would put here, and I know you're going to talk about, we can talk about Love or not, but I think most people understand this. I think I would put Love at the top of this tier, and then right behind him, I would actually put Bryce Young, and I would put JJ, Drake May, not necessarily this order, but JJ, Drake May, Bo
yeah,
Nix,
I'll throw him on.
Has all the potential that they could all have a season that we're not expecting. And I don't know who's necessarily going to have it, but I think Jordan Love is the most likely to outperform those people. But yeah, I think all of the other rookie QBs are right in this tier of, can they be something? Can they not? What can they show us in the rookie season? And I think Bryce Young, as I said, not many first round draft picks aren't still playing QB 5 years later. So that's where it's like Bryce Young, they put a lot into the offense this offseason. I'm expecting him to bounce back, and we'll see what happens. I actually am personally a Bryce Young hater. I hated the way he interviewed. I hated the way he talked. I just thought he was very much overconfident and cocky.
Smug.
Very smug. And so I kind of thought it was just going to be a flop, and nothing from football related, just literally from hearing the guy talk. So potentially he got humbled and is going to come back this year with a vengeance. If he doesn't, I don't think he's playing even the third year. I think that there's going to be a lot of him because he's just had a
same thing.
I think, what did we say last show or 2 shows ago? It was like 10 touchdowns all season or something like that. Like, it was terrible.
Yeah.
It's just real bad. So
I still think because of the fact that Drake May hasn't failed yet and Bryce Young has failed so far, there's no way I could in good confidence put Bryce Young ahead of Drake May. Just no shot.
And that's why I think all those are in their own tier. I think Jordan Love is the leading of the tier.
Similar tier, though. You're right.
And I think that they're all in this camp of like, who's going to come out the best, who's going to be the leader of the pack. And it might take one or two to figure that out, but all of them have potential to jump up into, tiers B or C easily, depending on performance.
I think you're right. This is a big tier full of Jordan Love, Drake May, Bryce Young, Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, Will Levis, all these guys who are young, have decent draft capital, decent pedigree, decent supporting cast. Like, something could break right. I think you will see somebody from our D tier here. If you're watching at home, I have an outdated QB list, so you're going to see Trey Lance in there. But trust me, we don't think Trey Lance is a top 20 quarterback. Somebody from this tier. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't think if we knew who it was going to be, we should go play the lottery and not talk about fantasy. But if someone in this tier likely will jump up to that B or A tier, because I think at this time last year, CJ Stroud was probably also in this D tier. So somebody has maybe not guaranteed, but I think I would not be surprised to see Jordan Love or Drake May or Bryce Young or Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy or Will Levis jump into that A tier this time next year. But Dave, it's been an hour 20. I'm really glad that you put together a thoughtful list, because at first I know assigning you homework is like the worst thing I could possibly do, but you nailed it. So I know you rushed through your RB, wide receiver, running back, and tight end tiers. Feel free to think about those again and send them back for next week, just for you guys listening at home. Next week, we'll go through our top, again, 18 to 20 running back rankings based on our consensus rankings. And then I'll talk again. We'll talk again about some of the differences in opinion that we have. I'm expecting a lot more disconnects there, because I think quarterback's a bit more cut and dry. Obviously, we had some disconnects, but running back, there's so much more to like, oh, he's a running back, a receiving running back. He's on a good offense, a bad offense. He's old. He's young. He has competition in his backfield. He doesn't have competition in his backfield. He's on the last year of his contract. He doesn't have a contract. He's the first, there's so many more variables I think that matter versus quarterbacks. Just like, are you good? Or are you not good? Do you score points? Do you not score points? And then tiebreakers or contracts. So it's like a lot more circumstances regarding running backs. I'm really looking forward to that episode.
Me too, brother. Great episode.
All right. Peace out.
Thank you everyone for watching. See you guys later.